Hello, my name is Aaron, and welcome to the Green Room. Today we have a little bit of a special version. It is Father's Day. Many of us have plans with our family later today, so today's session is actually going to be pre-recorded. We won't be able to answer any of your questions in the chat, but if you do have questions for our guests, just let us know in the comment section, and we will be sure to follow up with you. So I'm really excited to introduce today's special guest. He's a good friend of mine. He's a good guy. And today we're meeting with Sasha Rome. How's it going, man?
Hey, good. How are you?
Doing all right. You know, living another day in quarantine, another day in life of coronavirus.
I feel that.
Um, but any fun plans for Father's Day later today?
Not so far. Our pool in our neighborhood opened, so we might hit that up. But yeah, otherwise nothing too crazy. How about you?
Yeah, same thing. We got the pool going on later. My brother's
Cool.
actually he's been in Connecticut this whole time. Hasn't been home
Oh,
yet,
wow.
so he's coming home later today, and we're
Nice.
excited to get the family back together.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's gonna be really fun. So Sasha Rome, aka your real name is Dan. That's what I'll be I'll be calling you
Yeah.
Dan today. As
Cool.
as we do every Lunar Lounge interview, I like to start off talking a little bit about how we actually met because
Hmm.
part of what the Green Room is all about is sharing how to more effectively network in the music industry.
Right.
And I find our story to be really interesting because last week we met with Good Looks Collective, well, previous Good Looks Collective talent buyer Cam Kaminsky. And yet again, another connection was made through the Good Looks Collective area. I believe this was
Hmm.
the second show that we were hoping to throw in the Halloween show, and I was looking for some new artists. Kind of just threw
Hmm.
a post out there, and you ended up commenting back,
Yeah.
and that's how we ended up
Yeah.
meeting.
Right. Yeah. And then we ended up meeting up, and yeah, that was awesome. And you booked me for my first show, so that was awesome.
Yeah, man, that was a good time. That was the
Yeah.
second ever Lunar Lounge show. How
Yeah.
crazy is that?
Yeah.
Was
That
that
was awesome.
2018?
Yeah. Late 2018. Yeah.
Damn. We didn't think that we'd be sitting here 2 years later,
Yeah. It's
looking
crazy.
looking at each other on a computer screen for this contest.
Right.
But yeah, that was fun, and I also was really, um, I was excited because you, like someone like me, you're someone who has uh, demonstrated success in the music industry while also maintaining, a professional career. I believe, what was it, in
Right.
banking, right?
Yeah. I work in finance. Yeah. So definitely, yeah, that's been one of the tricky things, just balancing, like full-time job and producing on top of that. But I think once you find a good rhythm with it, it works.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people that are probably listening to this are in that same boat trying to get their feet
Yeah.
wet. Maybe it's not production, maybe it's something else. I mean, what would you
Right.
say has been kind of leading you to your success? And maybe before we even jump into that, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself. You've had a lot of things going on in your music career with the name change, working with Bonsai. Set the stage for us of what you do before
Right.
we jump into how you balance it.
Right. Yeah, so I started producing in 2017, and when I was growing up, I was in a couple bands, so I had a little bit of music experience, but when I was producing, that's when I started taking it a lot more serious. And back then I was making more trappy stuff, melodic trap type stuff, and I went under the name Mir. But then um, about I think yeah, so about early to mid last year, I started getting really into house music, and then I started working on that a lot more. And then I decided to switch the name to Sasha Room about like late last year, which I ended up doing early this year, and then went all in with the house music. And um, so yeah, the reason for that change was at first is because Mir was just really hard to find on Spotify or anything else. I think I was like the 45th result on there. But it worked out because with the sound change, I got to kind of hit two birds with one stone and switch the name, which kind of represented that sound change. And um, it just feels like a lot more personal, I guess, now.
Yeah, definitely. I love the new
Hmm.
sound that you have, by the way. I think it's awesome. I think it.
Thanks, man.
I think it's really cool. I mean, disco e house funk type of style is absolutely
Hmm.
taking over right now, and I think you have a
Hmm.
really good spin on it, kind of acknowledging a I don't want to say wave, but acknowledging a shift in taste without selling out your own style. So I think it's really impressive.
Right. Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so you've been doing that, and we'll touch on the Bonsai Collective thing in a bit because I feel like we have so many
Hmm.
different conversations we can go through. But I think
For sure.
probably how you could summarize yourself as a music producer and involved in the community as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then, how have you been balancing? I mean, a whole brand shift, and you've obviously spent a lot of time to get to where you are, your production levels. How have you been able to balance that
Yeah.
with your professional life?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the key is just having a separation. Like I make sure when I'm at work, I'm working. It's even harder now, you could say in a way to keep that separation since we're all from home, I'm working off the same computer for producing and for work, but I think that's key, just keeping that separation and then in your free time, spending a little less time on Netflix and things like that and making sure you're putting in the hours on production. I try to keep track of how many hours I'm doing per week. So just, so I know that I'm keeping kind of that steady level, always putting the work in. So I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
What's that
Yeah.
number? What's the number that you try to hit every week?
So when I was working in the office, it was 14 hours a week. But now since I have a little bit more time, it's closer to like 18 to 20 hours per week.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Have
So
you
I know as long as I'm hitting that, that I should be okay.
have you found that challenging to do in quarantine as time progresses? And one of the things we talked about with Cam last week was kind of the mental
Hmm.
health aspect of having
Right.
creative focus. Have you found that a challenge for you during quarantine?
I'd say like it kind of ebbs and flows, and one thing I realized I was a little bit harder on myself at the beginning of quarantine, trying to really make sure that every week I'm kind of hitting those hours and everything. But now, since it's been going on so long, I know that it kind of ebbs and flows. So there are weeks, where maybe I'll do a little bit less just because, yeah, it can get kind of monotonous, all of us just stuck at home. So sometimes you need those weeks where you just ease off a bit, maybe, I don't know, have a little bit more fun, stuff like
Yeah.
that. But then I know the next week, I'll get back to it. So yeah, so it's definitely been a little bit more of an ebb and flow.
Yeah. Something I found that's been really helpful for me, and I don't know if maybe this is probably a good segue for you to talk about bonsai, but I feel like a lot
Mm,
of people involved in the music scene have a few different things that they can do. So for me, on weeks where I feel like I don't have the creativity to produce, I
mm,
focus a lot on Lunar Lounge, or for example,
right,
I'm doing a live set next week, trying to focus on that. So maybe you lean into bonsai on weeks where you don't have the same time to produce.
right. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Yeah, I think just mixing it up is important, like you said.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Bonsai Collective, a really cool
Yeah.
kind of label group you're working with. Tell us from
Hmm.
what they actually are and what your involvement is with that group.
Right. Yeah. So we started in April of 2018, and we started with mostly melodic trap style, like almost Sam Gellaitry style music, And so we take exclusive submissions from artists across the world, and we started just as a label releasing music, and we had a small. I think I was one of the first roster additions. So it was originally started by Caption and Pause, and then I joined, and we had Afro Samuraiist and Spook, and a bunch of others that joined, and now we're at 13 members, I think it is, and we now have released melodic trap, but also some house music, and we started throwing shows last year, so that was a big thing for us last year, and we threw 7 shows in New York and one in San Francisco actually,
Nice.
which was a lot of fun. And so we were planning on throwing more shows this year, but with Corona, kind of put that at a stop. But we held one online festival, which was really cool. And now we've released a few compilations, and otherwise we've been releasing songs every month. You can find them on our SoundCloud page, and they're on all platforms. But now we're really focused on just releasing one song every month, but hitting an even higher quality than we did before. Just trying to make every release big, getting every artist on their own radio show through us, like their own radio mix, and also really highlighting them that whole month on our socials and doing some Q&As and different things like that just to highlight that artist every month.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I've admired about Bonsai Collective from afar, because I've got the chance to obviously interact with you probably most closely out of any of them, but I've talked to Caption and I've talked to some of the other people. I admire the family and sense of community that you all have. You guys have a Discord. Right. You all back each other's releases. How do you all manage to maintain the level of quality output, which inherently requires you to turn away some songs, while maintaining that sense of community and supporting? I imagine there's probably situations where an artist says, hey, I want to release this on Bonsai, and Caption or someone says, hey, this is like great job, but I don't think this is a fit. Has that ever happened?
Yeah, it happens a lot. Unfortunately, it's just, how it is, but I think we try to keep that separation again. We always tell everyone that we have that really high quality bar, and, we can only release so many songs per year, and it's really nothing personal. There's a sort of Bonsai sound, and if it doesn't fit within that, then it just is what it is. But there's lots of ways people can get involved, and I think one reason we've been able to keep up that community is that we are we are a roster of all artists. We don't have like a single figurehead like a lot of events and label groups kind of have, where all artists, it's kind of like artists for artists and fans. And another thing is we're just really all about helping younger artists grow. We're always trying to teach people and support younger artists that we see that are coming up. Our favorite releases are those artists that have a small amount of followers and we're able to bring them to a greater audience, like the EP from Magnus, if you remember that one. But he had only, I think, like 200 or 300 followers, but he gave us this EP, and it's just an amazing EP, kind of blend of Odessa and Flume style sound. And we were able to bring that, get him tens of thousands of plays that he wouldn't have been able to get before. And, everyone loved it. And that's just the best when, we can get a person like that audience,
Yep, that's awesome. And something that we've talked a lot about in the green room is the business aspect of music. And I'm sure people have picked up on this by now, but a label, which would you consider Bonsai? Well, it's a collective, right? Not necessarily a label.
Yeah, we're like a collective and a label and events. So
you gotta run the whole gamut. But that's kind of part of what you all do, is give artists that sense of access to a group of audiences who can listen to their music. And so tell me a little bit, you mentioned about how Bonsai Collective has a certain sound. How does that play into, where does that come from? What is the purpose of that?
Yeah, it's been surprisingly organic. When they first started the label Caption and Pause, and I joined soon after, they just had that kind of sound in mind. I think nowadays there's a lot of labels that are focusing on bass music and things like that, but we've always stayed true to the more melodic side of EDM, and specifically trap influenced, and now some house, as some of our roster members kind of diversified, like myself. But there's always kind of, honestly, so we vote on our tracks that we get submitted. We all kind of listen, and we all vote whether we want to accept it or not. And even if most people want it, but not all of us want it, then we still probably won't take it. It almost has to be like a unanimous decision on our end. So that's, I think, how we kept that sound, just filtering it through all of us, and just keeping that high quality standard.
That's really interesting, and I have to imagine has a lot of benefits, and also at some levels is very challenging when you feel like you've seen a really good song, but it doesn't past that. But then again, that's kind of what the whole idea of Bonsai is you're providing that collective, mindset and group of people.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what makes us really different. Definitely.
Yeah. What about the kind of art inspired behind it? I think there's a lot of Asian influences on Bonsai. Where does that ideology come from?
Yeah, especially especially Caption and Afro Samuraiist, they're both really into the Japanese aesthetic, and that's where Caption and Pause got the idea originally for bonsai, since it is a Japanese tree. And so, just to make a cohesive brand, we really ran with that aesthetic, and so that's where a lot of the bonsai aesthetic comes from, our art and things like that. And it kind of creates like a unifying visual for the whole label.
Yeah, definitely really cool.
Yeah.
So you
Hmm.
all are doing a lot of good work there. We touched on this, but I really want to dive into it a little bit more because I think we
Yeah.
wanted to, cover so many topics at once. Your
Hmm.
shift to Sasha Rome is not only important in the fact that you are changing your own sound and your brand, but of course your own community with bonsai, you need to still honor that and the audiences that you've accrued. How difficult or not was it in striking a balance between making a shift to what you think was more true to you while also maintaining
Hmm.
kind of that familiarity with bonsai and what you'd grown there?
Yeah. Like in terms of sound or.
Well, I have to imagine that part of that branding
Hmm.
as you look to release new music, that had to get approved by
Hmm.
Caption and some of those people.
Well, actually, we try to let every roster member kind of do their own thing with their project. We don't try to control that aspect of it too much.
Hmm.
And it's actually interesting because a lot of us, I think, started in a very similar place, sound wise, but we've kind of really diversified over time. I went more in the house direction. He's making more D&B now, and Natura, he went from trap to more like metal inspired trap. So we're all kind of moving in our own direction, but we're all very supportive of that. And you know, it's still maybe for individual releases on the label, maybe some of their sounds might not fit now, or maybe they'll have to, maybe for that they'd have to make a specific style of track. But as far as their own projects, their own releases, we can all do whatever we want. So we have freedom with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think probably a better way for me to have framed it was how you said it. It's the actual individual releases.
Mm,
Knowing that whatever you do with your project is great, but if you want to release a song, you want to continue to release a song in the label,
yeah.
honoring the sound that you all have expertly curated.
Right. Yeah, and that was one cool thing about so we just had a roster compilation that was called Hayashi, but that was every single roster member created a song just for it, and so we just released that. You can find it on our SoundCloud and other platforms, but that was cool because we kind of went around that specific sort of sound that we're looking for and just released a bunch of songs all at once in our own individual styles just to showcase where everyone in the roster was.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a special project just because, yeah, it just really shows the talent we have on the roster and just the diversity of styles, too.
Absolutely. That's really cool. I like again, it can kind of honor both of those things.
Right.
Um, so we talked a lot, about everything that's kind of led up to where we are now, how we've
Hmm.
met, what you've been doing, your switch, your move to bonsai. You touched on that you've been producing and working a lot in quarantine, but you also talked a
Hmm.
little bit about that kind of virtual festival. So, I mean, it's been
Hmm.
about what, 3 months now in quarantine. What's been going on?
Yeah.
What have you been finding yourself doing the most?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. I had this just this like big internal push to start going after vocals. Actually, that was something that I've wanted to experiment with for a while, and I thought this was the perfect time since we all have extra time. So I've been taking vocal lessons for I think about a month
Nice.
and a half now, and I'm going to keep doing those for the future, just weekly lessons. And so that's been a big focus for me. Started writing lyrics as well. I've been writing lyrics on 3 different songs. So, you know, it's definitely a process. It almost feels like starting over in some ways, kind of like when I first started producing. But I know over time it'll get better and better. And then I'm hoping to either by the end of the year, by early next year, start integrating those into my productions and maybe even release an EP with those. So that's kind of the goal.
I'm
So, and in the meantime, still, keeping up with my productions as well, doing some remixes, things like that.
Yeah, I mean that's really impressive, and the guitars that a bass in the background will kind of
Yeah.
give this away. But you integrate a lot of natural things within your production. It's not just electronic sounds. You lay down your own bass lines. Now you're saying your
Hmm.
own vocals, and that's pretty
Right.
impressive for sure.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's since I came from that band background, that's always been a focus for me. And I think I definitely respect producers who do it all, on the computer. But for me, I think I think instruments are just the best way to channel your emotions and to just the purest way to make music, I guess, If you can just get on the keys or get on the guitar and just like strum and just, come up with something, that's usually, I feel like that's usually where my best songs come from, the ones that mean the most.
Yep, absolutely. Now I forgot that you were in a band before. I totally forgot about that. Tell me how that kind of came about.
Yeah, well, so it was a long time ago. It was back in high school, but I first started playing guitar when I was 15. And so I made a two-piece band with one of my friends. He was a drummer. And then we even made a whole album. But, we were doing it all just for fun. But that was my first taste of music. It was kind of like a hard rock band. We played a couple shows in my hometown of Akron, Ohio. And that was a lot of fun. And then in college, I had another band. It only lasted about a year, but we made a few songs and we played a battle of the bands, and that was a full band. So we had a singer and a bassist. I played guitar and we had a drummer as well. So those were my first big taste with music. And then I kept up with my guitar ever since then,
Hmm.
but it was only once I started producing where I started making songs again.
Yeah,
So.
that's awesome.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
I hope I'm not getting too existential here, but uh, you've been doing music since you were 15, so it's clearly something that stuck with you. And
Yeah.
we talked about how you're balancing your professional career as well. What
Mhm.
is your intention in terms of, let's just say, music at large, the music industry that can encompass bonsai, that can encompass producing? Where do you see
Yeah.
that fitting within your life? Full time? I mean, I don't want to put labels on it like a full time or a hobby. Maybe I'll just let you answer the question.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, definitely the goal eventually is full time. But I've realized, especially over like the last few years, that you just have to be patient with it. There's no reason to really rush into it. And I've been able to keep a good balance, I think, with music and my full time job so far.
Mm-hmm.
But my plan right now is to once again keep working on the vocals, keep working on the lyric writing, hopefully release that EP and then keep working on those and then really turn my project into a blend of indie and electronic, release those, keep releasing house tracks that you can play in the club, but also start blending that more with a lot of my indie influences and put my own vocals on it, things like that. And then hopefully, once things kind of settle down with the virus, start playing some more shows again in New York, just keep building up the exposure, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But another thing I'm doing is I want to switch from finance into marketing
Mm-hmm.
for my job, and then I'm hoping that I'll have more synergies with music. And even if I'm not full time music within the next year or two, at least hopefully I can work in that, and then maybe even do some marketing on the music side.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. But just trying to kind of streamline my whole life, I guess, make it all come together.
Yeah, and we talked about that. So if you're still looking for
Yeah,
jobs, we can talk offline. I'm happy to continue
for
to
sure,
help if I can
for
at
sure.
all. Um,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
but yeah, no, I like what you said there. Is kind of, it sounds like, if I'm understanding correctly, it's not
Hmm.
putting in necessarily any expectations on your
Yeah,
success or career or however you want to call it, but just putting in the work that you know needs to get you
right.
there, and just continuing that process. And whether it's counting the hours that you're producing or ensuring that you're putting the output. I love that.
Yeah, that's the most important thing that I've realized. Like just focusing on the work, like just I think just take it week by week. It's good to have goals longer term, but I think the most important is just taking it week by week, putting in that work, and then everyone has a different path, and so you never know when you'll get that big break or anything
Yeah.
like that. So you can't really plan for it. You got to just keep putting in the work, keep putting yourself out there. Also, make sure you're doing a good job promoting yourself too. That is important.
Mm-hmm.
But then otherwise, yeah, you got to just trust the process, really.
Absolutely. Now let me ask you this. It's kind of a shift, but I picked up on something that
Hmm.
you said was you said you wanted to make indie tracks and music that you can still dance at the club, but you know that
Hmm.
was popular. When we interviewed Odd Mob a few weeks ago, he talked about
Hmm.
how his album had actually been delayed because his music wasn't radio friendly enough. And one of the
Hmm.
interesting things that comes from an EDM artist is that there's kind of this weird mix in that the vast majority of EDM fans find out the new music they like in the club, which is where people are
Right.
dancing. It's a little bit more energetic, whereas the radio, which is where more mainstream people can find them, is kind of shies away from that. So as an EDM artist, you tend to try to balance. I want
Right.
some songs are going to be able to be played in the club so that people can hear them while they're going out, and I want some songs that can be played on the radio that people can hear that. Is that kind of resonate with maybe what you're trying to balance with Sasha Rome?
Yeah, I think that's been one of the harder things to balance. Something I think a lot about. But yeah, the way I'm thinking about it now is almost like I don't want to say separate, but I think there's going to be some tracks that I make specifically for the club, and then I'm always going to have an electronic element to my tracks. Even
Mm-hmm.
say the indier ones where like I'll be singing on it and things like that. Maybe I'll throw in my guitar, but I still will have a hard beat around it and things like that. But I think, yeah, it's one approach I see because there's some artists you see that do a similar thing. Chanel Trace is the first one that comes to mind, although a lot of his could fit in the club. But he sings on a lot of his original tracks, but then he'll still have remixes and things that are just like full club house tracks. So
Mm-hmm.
I think you can do both under the same project as long as you have kind of a similar sound to both. Maybe use kind of similar synths or maybe similar drums or as long as you have little things that make it your own style, then I
Mm-hmm.
think you can kind of do both.
Yeah, and that's part of, again, just to tie a lot of these conversations together. When we spoke with Cam last week, we talked about creating a brand that has room to grow. So we used
Hmm.
Diplo as the example. If Diplo had jumped in and made country music, in 2013, it wouldn't have worked super well. He built his name up through trap and twerk dancing, and then kind of eventually used the Skrillex Jackie project to advance into future bass. And then
Hmm.
fast forward, he's doing house with Nitty Gritty's house thing, the whole On My Mind
Right.
track. He's got the higher ground, and now all of a sudden, next thing you know, Diplo is able to get away with pretty much producing any genre at all.
Right.
Like if Diplo came out
That's
with
true.
he pretty much did come up with a rock album, the California EP.
Okay.
Pretty much
Yeah,
was
yeah,
pretty much did have some rock elements in it. So yeah, as long as you're able to create kind of cohesion both at the production level as well as the
yeah.
branding
Right.
level, I definitely think that's something that can work.
Yeah, yeah, like because I think all artists think about like having a unique sound and things like that, but just from everything I've like read and just like after producing for a few years, seeing like the industry and stuff, I think you can shoehorn yourself like into a specific narrow genre, and that works for a lot of people too. You can create a really focused fan base and everything and just ride that, but I think it's just more creatively liberating to find that unique sound other ways through maybe some of your tools and things like that, and not worry as much if your project starts evolving.
Yep.
Kind of let the project go where you're feeling. That's what I did, and that's how I you know switched from trap to house. That's just what I was feeling, and who knows where I'll be in, I don't know, 3 5 years, but I think and all those skills that you build up, it all builds on itself anyway. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
And
and I've seen a lot of my fans carry over too.
yeah,
So
absolutely. And what a lot of people do is, there's this kind of balance you want to strike of like, yay, do your artist project, do whatever speaks to you. And then like, again, that kind of extreme example of like if Diplo had gone from trap to country.
Right.
What a lot of people we've seen do is you take like the 1788L, take Marshmallow. We all know that's really .com. People who want to make that switch, I mean, if you really want to, you can rebrand. What was LS Dream? Who was that before?
Oh yeah. I can't remember, but yeah, I remember he
it's
had
a
another project.
big.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big name. That once they say
Right.
it, once someone says it in the comments, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, that's
Right.
totally who it was.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of summarize this and hear about what you've got going on next. Obviously, we don't know when this coronavirus situation will end, and if
Right.
live shows and things of that nature are a priority, who knows when that'll be. But as you kind
Right.
of look to the rest of 2020 and maybe 2021, what are you having in store for us?
Yeah, so I still have 3 or 4 different singles that are almost ready. I have one coming out next month actually with Falcone, so I'm really excited for that. So they're all kind of house like mixed with indie kind of blends, and they all have original vocals on them from different artists. So I'm excited for that. Gonna keep the year going with that, and then in the meantime, just keep working on my EP. We'll see if that lands either late this year or early next year. And then otherwise, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, I'll get to do some more live streams. I've been talking to Deep Root Records about maybe doing a live stream with them. So
Nice.
just trying to see different avenues for that. And then we'll see when shows start again. But excited for that too.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
Dan, Sasha Rome, this has been awesome. I've
Yeah.
really appreciated it. Is there any like last minute things you'd want to share with us, or how we can keep up with you?
Yeah, you can just find me. So I'm Sasha Rome Music on most platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and you can find me Sasha Rome on Spotify, SoundCloud, or Apple Music. So, but yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Aaron.
Yeah, no
Yeah, that was
problem.
awesome.
All right. Well, hey, stay safe out there, and I'm sure we'll be in touch and we'll talk more soon.
Yeah, you too.
All right, man. Catch you later.
You too.